What did ancient humans do?
Someday, someone will plan your funeral. They already know roughly how it goes. A box, some flowers, a few quiet words said over a hole in the ground. You've seen it 100 times. You could almost run it yourself. But here's something strange. Every single piece of that ritual is older than you can possibly imagine. Older than your country, older than farming, older than writing, older maybe than our own species. For more than 300,000 years, human beings have buried, burned, painted, and grieved over their dead. And the deeper archaeologists dig, the further back that impulse runs. Past the pyramids, past the Ice Age, past us, into creatures that lived and died before the first word was ever spoken aloud. Because how an ancient human treated a dead body is one of the only windows we have into the moment the human mind switched on. So what exactly did they do? The trail runs through blood-red dust, through thousands of hand-carved beads, through a pit of bones at the bottom of a cave, and it ends with a question about what they believed was waiting on the other side. Let's start with the color red. One of the very first things archaeologists notice in ancient graves is ochre. Iron-rich earth, ground by hand into a deep red powder and sprinkled over the body. At Qafzeh cave, in what is now Israel, human beings were laid to rest beneath red ochre roughly 100,000 years ago. Half a world away, in Australia, a man we call Mungo man was buried, his body dusted in ochre, around 42,000 years ago. And near him, just as old, lay Mungo lady, the earliest cremation we have ever found. Her body burned, the bones crushed, and then burned again with deliberate care. Stop and think about what ochre actually means. You have to travel to find it. You have to grind it down. You have to choose to cover a lifeless body in the color of blood, the color of life itself. Nobody goes to that trouble for something they are simply throwing away. And across continents, the dead were arranged the same way, washed, wrapped, often curled onto their side, knees drawn up to the chest, like a person sleeping, like a person who might somehow wake. But it goes far beyond color. At a site called Sungir, near the city of Vladimir in Russia, archaeologists uncovered something that still stuns the people who study it. An adult man and a short distance away, two children, a boy of around 12 and a girl of around 9, laid down head to head and buried roughly 34,000 years ago. Their bodies were covered, head to toe, in beads, not dozens, not hundreds. Around 13,000 of them, each one carved by hand from mammoth ivory. The anthropologist Eric Trinkhaus, who spent years studying the site, estimated that the beads on the children alone would have taken something like 10,000 hours of work. 10,000. And beside the children lay spears made from the straightened tusks of mammoths. And to this day, nobody fully understands how anyone straightened solid ivory at all. So picture it, a small band of people in the killing cold of an Ice Age winter, fighting every day just to stay alive. And they stopped. They spent months pouring that labor into two dead children. That is not survival. That is grief. That is belief, carved bead by bead into ivory. And here is where it becomes truly unsettling. This was never something only humans like us did. Back in 1908, in a French cave called La Chapelle-aux-Saints, two priests, the Buissonny brothers, uncovered the skeleton of an old Neanderthal man, toothless and arthritic, clearly cared for long into old age, lying in what looked like a deliberately dug grave. It was the first real hint that another kind of human had buried its dead. Then came Shanidar Cave in Iraq, where in the 1950s, the archaeologist Ralph Selecki found Neanderthal bodies, and around one of them, dense clusters of ancient pollen. The famous flower burial, a Neanderthal supposedly laid to rest on a bed of flowers. That exact claim is debated. The pollen may have been dragged in by burrowing animals. But in 2020, a team led by Emma Pomeroy excavated a new body at the very same site and confirmed what the bones had been whispering for decades. These dead were placed there, on purpose, with care, and it may reach back further still. At Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones in Spain, the remains of dozens of individuals, nearly 430,000 years old, were found at the bottom of a deep underground shaft, together with a single beautiful pink quartzite hand axe that researchers nicknamed Excalibur. Some believe it was an offering left for the dead. And in South Africa, in the Rising Star Cave, Lee Berger's team argues that Homo naledi, a human cousin with a brain barely a third the size of ours, carried its dead deep into an almost unreachable chamber. Every one of these claims is argued over fiercely, but the pattern keeps pointing in the same impossible direction. The refusal to abandon the dead may be older and far deeper than humanity itself. So why do scientists lose sleep over a buried body? Because you cannot bury someone with care unless something extraordinary is happening inside your skull. You have to grasp that this person is gone, and yet somehow still matters. You have to be able to imagine the invisible, that they might be going somewhere. A grave is the fingerprint of abstract thought, of memory that outlasts the body, of grief, and of the very first faint idea of an afterlife. The moment a human being knelt down and decorated a corpse, a brand new kind of creature existed on this planet, one that could love a person who was no longer there. And the dead asked things of the living. Across the ancient world, the body was washed and dressed and watched over through the night. Tools were left for them, food, ornaments, weapons, gifts for a journey from which no traveler had ever returned to send word. To sit beside a body in the dark, to lower precious things into the earth and walk away. That was a way of saying something we still say today, without ever finding the words for it. You were real, you mattered, and you will not be forgotten. We like to call these people primitive, but think honestly about the last funeral you went to. The flowers, red ones, so often. The best clothes on a body that no longer needs them. The objects we slip into the coffin, the need to mark the spot and return to it, and say the name out loud. 300,000 years of technology have changed almost everything about how we live. They have changed almost nothing about how we grieve. What if that is not a coincidence at all? What if grief this old isn't something we ever learned, but something we simply are? So when someone finally plans your funeral and lays you gently down and stands there not quite knowing what to do with their hands or their heart, understand what they are really doing. They are performing the oldest human ritual there is, older than your country, older than farming, older than writing, older, maybe, than our species itself. The simple, stubborn refusal to let the people we love just vanish into the dark. We have been doing it for 300,000 years, and not once in all that time have we ever stopped. If this gave you chills, there's one more ancient mystery that hits even closer. What did they believe was waiting on the other side? That's the next one. I see you there.